The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar on optimizing sales team performance by aligning prospecting and conversations. I see a few names popping in right now, so let's take a bit, possibly 1 minute, let everyone trickle in. And to ensure our audio quality is good, in the questions box, just type in what city, what state, what country you're from, just so we can make sure our audio is good. Thank you.
Vienna, wow.
Looks like we have Houston, Los Angeles, Vienna, Cincinnati, Toronto, Portland,
Vienna, wow.
Oklahoma.
You should be asleep.
Awesome. We see a ton of people trickle in. That's good. We'll be starting shortly. If you just joined right now, you are hopefully in the right place. Today's webinar is about optimizing sales team performance by aligning prospecting and conversations. And we're joined by two individuals who have been in the game of sales for quite a long time. Looks like tons of people in Phoenix. Wow. Cool. Let's begin. So the gist of the webinar, just to give everyone an overview, is that prospecting and conversations we find often are some of the hardest things within any sales processes. It's getting the first conversation going. It's breaking in the door. It's also targeting a net new account and having the first conversation. Now, after you prospect, what do you say? What's the messaging you write? How do you conduct a cold call? Prospecting and conversations make up any good sales process, and they also kick off your customer experience. And I can imagine anyone on this call today, whatever company you're part of, you already have a existing sales methodology, whether it's Sandler, Challenger Sale, Spin Selling, etc. This webinar will help you optimize your prospecting and conversations through a digital and social selling approach so you can engage the modern buyer. And the two speakers we have today are one, Ron Apolonia, VP of Sales Training, or actually VP of Client Training at Sales for Life. He's also Sandler Trained and can provide a lot of the context of how Sandler Training methodology can be applied to the digital world. And secondly, we have Brad McDonald, Director of Operations of Sandler Training. Who better to have on a call than someone who's a part of Sandler Training? So let's kick it off to the second slide.
Just having some technical issues here, guys. I think it's frozen here. Let's just try that again. Sorry, guys. All right, so I'm Ron Apolonia. I'm VP of Client Training at Sales for Life, and I've got with me Brad McDonald, Director of Operations at Sandler. And Brad, can you tell us maybe a little bit, just to contextualize for the group, what it is that you do at Sandler Training?
Well, thanks, Ron. Thanks for having me on. I was a Sandler franchise owner for 12 years, as we have franchises all over the USA and around the world. And now I sold my franchise, and I now work with the corporate office. And the number one function I have is training and coaching our franchisees. So I don't as much deal with our end client anymore. I deal with the franchisees. So that's my main role.
Okay. So we had a very, just to loop everyone in on the conversation, and we had a very interesting conversation, I guess, earlier in the week, and then actually today about, millennials. And I think it's not just millennials. To me, what kind of made sense to partner with Sandler on this was an issue, a problem that I keep seeing coming up over and over again as we're going through clients. So just to kind of put this into context, a lot of the clients that we work with have sort of a BDR or an SDR model, younger salespeople coming in, and then they've got to do some prospecting. They've got to engage those prospects and hand them off to an account executive. And in some cases, the account executive might be a little bit older, just maybe like 28. And the problems they keep saying is really twofold. Number one is, how do I fill my pipeline? And number two is, what do I say? What do I say seems to be the number one response that I get asked of me. And so just to put a little context for everybody in the room here, you can see that salespeople, and this is just a research from HubSpot, salespeople are saying it's getting harder to elicit a response from buyers compared to just a couple of years ago. And of course, what we think is that number one is you're likely reaching out to cold prospects all the time. You're not really doing anything to warm it up. And number two, when you finally do get it warmed up and you're able to have a conversation, you kind of just drop the ball because you're saying something that everyone else is saying. So I want to give you a couple of scenarios, and then I want to loop you in, Brad, to just kind of tell me from a conversational selling point of view, what is it that you would be sharing or guiding the conversation. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what are the prospecting techniques we use is really looking for buyers or decision makers through something we call sphere of influence. So if there's a particular, let's say in this case, it's an account, maybe New Horizons is a client of mine. I want to look for people inside New Horizons that have moved on to new companies. Maybe they've moved on to a competitor. Maybe there's an internal champion that can introduce me to folks. All sorts of things. So let's look at the very first one, advocate. I'm doing business with Daniel. Daniel has been a client of mine for a year. He changes companies. Typically, he will go to the same industry, a higher position, and now I can end up asking Daniel for a chat. Now, I know Daniel is going to take my call, but what is it that I say? I don't have a very, very robust relationship with him, right? Dan just knows me. We talked when I sold him. Maybe we talked, 2-3 times a year. Now he's got a new gig. And what occurred to me is that what fits the best here is something that Sandler calls the upfront contract. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about what is the upfront contract? How do you use it? And give me a couple of, how would you say it? How would you start off the conversation with an upfront contract with a guy like Daniel, where I know him and I now want to break into his company?
Okay, thanks. The upfront contract is simply a conversational method or vehicle for structuring a meeting. And when I say structuring a meeting, it might be as little as structuring 30 seconds that you're going to give me on the phone to tell you why I called. It might also be structuring a 2-hour meeting or something like that. When you think about your thing where I'm going to call this fellow Daniel, who I know but don't know very well, but he's at a company that potentially could be a customer for me. If I call Daniel up and he has a vague recollection of who I am, I might say something like this. In fact, do you mind, Ron, if you and I sort of role play it? I know everybody hates role play, so I usually say, let's just do situational simulation. Do you mind if you and I do that?
Sure.
So how about you be Daniel, this prospective customer of mine, and I'll be the person that Daniel knows a little bit, and I'll do sort of a mini upfront contract. So phone rings and you answer it and you say,
this is Daniel.
Hey, Daniel, it's Brad McDonald. I know that name might not ring a bell, but we met a few weeks ago at a networking event. Not sure if you recall that or not.
Oh, yeah, I think I do recall you. Yes. How are you?
Hey, doing well. Thanks a lot. Dan, I was wondering if you give me 30 seconds. I'll tell you why I called, and then you can tell me if it makes any sense for us to keep talking or not.
Okay.
Okay, so now if you break out a role play, now I've done what's sort of what I call mini, M-I-N-I, mini upfront contract. In that slide, I haven't satisfied all 5 of those things, but I did a few things. One is, it wasn't a complete call, but I did relieve a few of Daniel's tensions. And typically when a salesperson calls in, Ron, I think prospects, it takes them 1 to 2 seconds to realize a salesperson's on the line. And their two biggest fears are, how long is this person going to keep me on the phone? And what are they going to ask me to do? And so what I did is I said, would you give me 30 seconds? I'll tell you why I called, and then you can decide if we keep talking. So the number 4 there, the duration of the meeting, now it's 30 seconds, which hopefully is relieving some of your anxiety about how long I'm going to keep you on the phone. And I told you, number 1, the purpose. I'm just going to tell you why I called. And then 5, the outcome. You get to decide if we keep talking. So I took care of your 2 biggest concerns. How long are you going to keep me on the phone? What are you going to ask me to do? So that's a very, very short upfront contract, but it typically is effective at relieving some of the anxiety on the person being called. So that's my first example. Now, if you and I then have a conversation, like let's say you say, sure, I'll give you 30 seconds, and then I might do my 30-second commercial. And I'm going to make this up, but let's suppose I am, say, a financial advisor, and I just say to you, well, Daniel, I'm in the financial business, and people like yourself, if they want to talk to me after this call, it's usually 1 of 3 reasons. They're frustrated with trying to navigate the stock market, can't make sense out of it. 2, they're afraid of running out of money before they run out of time on this earth. Or 3, their current budget and finances are a mess. Not sure if any of those are a concern to you. If they are, maybe we should talk. What do you think? And then I shut up, and you say something like,
So let me just jump in out of role play here.
yeah, go ahead.
What I really like about this, that I think a lot of people are not doing, is they're reaching out. They're so excited when they finally get somebody on the phone, Brad, that I think Sandler, I don't know if you guys still say this, but I heard you say, show up and throw up. You just try to steal 30 minutes of their time and just run through, the pitch that I got to get all 379 words out of my mouth, and hopefully something magical happens. And what you're doing is you're just kind of setting up a very respectful engagement where you're saying, look, how about A or B? You're kind of giving a lot of the control to me, which is putting me at ease. And if you're giving me the control, I'm willing to continue this conversation for a much longer duration. That's how you're making me feel. Like I'm more willing to engage with you, because it seems like, at least to me, that you're giving me the power, but I have a sense that you're probably controlling the conversation here.
Well, that's the idea. We always want our prospect to feel a sense of control, but I want to stay in control of the process. So when I said to you, hey, you get to pick, you get to decide if we keep talking after 30 seconds or not, I think you feel some sense of control. And I only asked for 30 seconds because I'm pretty early in the relationship. And if you think about an analogy, you meet somebody at a party, and 2 minutes after you meet them, you wouldn't say, will you marry me? That would be moving a little too fast in the relationship. You might talk for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes and then say, hey, can we get together for coffee next week? Well, by asking people for 30 seconds, I'm asking something that's easy to give, 30 seconds. And then at the end of the 30 seconds, if you said, yeah, I got some of those issues, maybe we talk for 2 or 3 minutes. And then after 2 or 3 minutes, I might say something like, do you think it makes sense for us just to have a 20-minute face-to-face meeting to see if there's a future here or not? So I'm incrementally moving from hardly knowing you to a long-term relationship, which is easier for you to swallow than all at once.
Now, would you do an upfront contract if we already knew each other? So, for example, let's say you and I have been doing business for a year, and maybe you provided me with Sandler Training, but maybe I only met you 3 times in a year. You're now providing training to my team, and I end up leaving and going to a new company, and you go ahead and contact me. How would upfront contracts sound in that case?
Well, if we had, if I called you up and I said, hey, Daniel, it's Brad again. I know we spent some time together over the past year. I know you're at a new company. I'm just curious if in your new position you would be open to a short conversation about Sandler Training, sort of the same kind of things we did at your last company. Is that something that you and I could talk about even for a few minutes? So opening question, give you control, and hopefully you'll say,
yeah, sure. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, at that point, our relationship, you remind me of the relationship, and you're asking to bring it over. It just makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. I would say, yeah, absolutely. What do you have in mind, Brad?
so here, then I would say, well, why don't we just talk for 2 or 3 minutes now, and then figure out what it is we want to talk about, and then we'll schedule a time to get together, and then before we hang up, we can decide exactly what's going to happen in that meeting. So then I would probably ask you a couple questions. Tell me about your new role, your new position. Tell me the kind of frustrations you have in the sales world, or are there any things that you think could be better, so on and so forth. And I ask you a few questions, and I get a little bit of surface pain on the table. And then I say, okay, well, this sounds like some things we could talk about. So then I'd say, how about let's get together Thursday afternoon? Does that work for you, Daniel?
Okay. So
and he says yes. And then I would go into a little bit more of an upfront contract about what you and I are going to do at this coming meeting.
Okay. So it sounds like you're going from upfront contract to upfront contract. Every conversation is including this tactic.
It is a little bit of a problem when you get really into Sandler. You kind of get infected with this, and yeah, you want to do an upfront contract for every meeting. So now on the positive side of that, I do upfront contracts for a lot of things. Not every upfront contract in your life has to have 5 parts. I mean, it could be as simple as, where are we meeting? What are we talking about? How long are we spending together? So, but you're right. Upfront contract.
Okay. So let me change gears on you here for a second. And this is going to be a cold email. So one of the things that I've got somebody waving at me saying, I think your camera's on, Brad. Maybe just
Let me shut that off.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's say now I've gone through my prospects with, the ones that know me, the ones that, are at least it's an easy way, and maybe it's an introduction. And now I start looking for people who are changing jobs, and maybe I've never met them before. I'm going to do a cold outreach. And so one of the things that we teach people to do is put this cadence together, right? So we like diverse methodology. We'll like not just phone and email, but we're going to mix it up. We're going to do some social, back to phone. Maybe we might do a video email like it's on the screen right now, and then back to phone. But one of the things that we're finding is that a lot of the people that use these tools, they think the tool is going to do the heavy lifting. And if you sort of flub your way through a sales conversation, then the only thing this tool is going to do is show the face of the person flubbing through a sales conversation. So let's say I'm going to make a video, and I'm going to reach out to, we'll use Daniel again. Use Daniel as our prospect. Never met him. Absolute cold outreach, and I start to pick, maybe this is the first outreach. I'm going to send a video to Daniel and see if I can engage him in any kind of response. And one of the things that I thought of when people are saying, what do I say? I mean, obviously they know the product and what the product can do for the person. But one of the things I see missing that Sandler does is the 30-second commercial. So can you tell me a little bit about the 30-second commercial and how it might be suited for something like this?
Sure. A 30-second commercial is once again, it's a method for getting your prospects' attention by asking them something about them instead of just starting off like a lot of sales calls, which start off with, here's our great product, here's some offers I have for you, here's what our company can do for you. And of course, most people are not interested in hearing about some late great product or company, but everybody's interested in what bothers them. So a 30-second commercial, there's a lot of ways to do it. The one I did earlier with you was along the lines of, let me throw 3 little pain hooks out there. And I said something to the effect of, let's say I'm a financial advisor, and I said, Daniel or Ron, I said, typically, if you want to keep talking to me after this 30 seconds over, it's because you're frustrated with trying to navigate the confusion of the stock market. You're a little afraid that your money might run out before your time on this earth does, or you're just sick and tired of trying to figure out a budget that will work for you in today's investment world, something like that. So I threw out 3 little hooks. Each one I use some word like afraid, frustrated, upset. And I'm trying during that process to get you inside your head to say, ouch, yes, that hurts. Now, anybody listening on this call can take whatever they sell and think, what are 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 problems that we solve, and how, instead of telling somebody what it is we sell, what's the problem we solve, and what's a question I would ask to get them to think, ouch. I can give it to you in another world. When I was selling sales training, if I called a prospect who cold call or a warm call, I would say, and let's say, Ron, let's say once again, you're my prospect. I call and you own a small business with 4 salespeople. After I did my opening, I might even say something like, well, Ron, this is Brad McDonald. Doesn't ring a bell, does it? You mind playing along with me here, Ron? So,
Okay.
Yeah, that name doesn't ring a bell, does it, Ron?
No, it doesn't.
That's okay. I didn't think it would. Hey, Ron, this is a sales call. Would you like to hang up?
That's all. So how many times have people said yes to you?
In 13 years of doing that, I had 2 people hang up on me or say yes, they wanted to hang up.
Wow.
And so not very often. Now, most people are going to think that's stupid. I'm not going to do it. It's never going to work. All I can say is it works. And if you don't believe me, call somebody in Alaska that you never have to worry about seeing or running into and try it. Unlikely they'll hang up. But anyway, the point is, why don't people hang up? Because they're not expecting it. It's called a pattern interrupt. And it breaks the pattern in their mind just for a couple seconds that this is a salesperson. I want to get rid of it. Because what did I do? I was very disarmingly honest. I said, this is a sales call. And when I said, would you like to hang up? Most people aren't ready for that kind of disarming honesty. And most people just say something like, they laugh or they say, no, go ahead, or what do you got? And then I say, Ron, I'm with Sandler Training. Not sure if you've heard of it, but we are a sales training and coaching company. And typically clients come to us because they're frustrated with too many think-it-overs. They're sick and tired of their pipeline not being full and not knowing who to call or how to call them, or they're tired of too many proposals floating around the ether with no decisions. Not sure if those are a concern to you right now, Ron. If they are, maybe we should talk. What do you think? So if you look at your slide there, the opening statement was, and Brad McDonald, this is after you gave me permission to do the 30-second commercial. Right. By the way, if somebody gives you permission to do a 30-second commercial, you can't take 6 minutes. That's not fair. So I got to have something that's about 30 seconds. So you said, sure, go ahead. And I said, once again, Brad McDonald, Sandler Training. That's my opening statement. I work with clients who are, now my pain statement, frustrated with too many think-it-overs, sick and tired of excessive proposals going out the door and hardly any of them coming back. Frustrated because they don't feel like they're getting in front of enough people. So several pain statements I did. And then positioning statement was just something simple like, Ron, not sure if you're dealing with any of those. Maybe we should, if you are, maybe we should talk. What do you think? And it's not hard close. It's very gentle. And I want you to think, ouch, ouch, ouch. And when I say, what do you think? Should we talk? I want you to say, yeah, let's talk about it. Or I might say, don't know if any of those are concerning you right now. Are any of them a problem you're dealing with? So I've ended my 30-second commercial, and now it's over to you to keep the conversation going. So that's one way it works.
So yeah, and I really like this because it's to me, it's just so much more respectful than trying to steal time from people. And I got to tell you, like your opening statement, and even though I kind of knew a little bit about, I didn't know exactly what you were going to say, but I am Sandler trained. I know about the opening statement. It still throws me off, even though I know you're going to say something that is probably going to be not what I expect. It throws you off, and I would not have said, no, I want to hang up. It's something that is just such a respectful way to sell that I think a lot of people's head trash is going to disappear. But what I want to focus in on here is pain statement, because I think a lot of people out here listening are going to think that the pain statement is something that it's not. So can you tell me what you mean by pain and kind of the different types of pain that you teach people to get to?
Well, pain is a word that we use that's certainly sometimes misunderstood. And if I was going to try to give a really easy or simple definition of pain, pain is just contrast. Contrast between where a prospect is and where they'd like to be. Sometimes they know they have the problem, sometimes they don't. If I have a sore shoulder, the pain is pretty obvious. I have a sore shoulder. The contrast is I have a sore shoulder and I don't want to have a sore shoulder. So that's easy. So pain, just think of it as a word for contrast. Now, let's say a person is in IT services, and I don't know a lot about IT, but let's say their company, provides networking services in an office, and what might be a contrast or a surface pain that a company has. When there's a problem, they can't get service very quickly. The system breaks down more often than it should. Things like that. Those are what we call problems, surface level pains. When I'm selling sales training, what are surface problems that salespeople have? They get too many think it overs. They spend a lot more time generating proposals that are just off in the ether. They sell on price too often. Those are surface problems. So if you think about whatever your business is and whatever you sell, think of what are the surface problems that people will tell you about. Once again, I'll go back to my world. People will frequently tell me, I don't get in front of enough people. And I think that's probably something that you all help people do is with your prospecting. But that's a surface pain. Now, what I need to do in the 3 levels of pain to convince them without beating them over the head with a stick, but to use the old Socratic method, is to help them self-discover the reason for the problem. So I might say something like, let's say, Ron, you said to me, well, I'm just not getting in front of enough people, or my salespeople don't get in front of enough people. What I want to do is I want to ask a question. I call it a presumptive question that in a polite way demonstrates a couple things to you. One is, and I'll just tell you the question in this case, and then we'll talk about what it might demonstrate. So let's say you said to me, yeah, my salespeople, I have 3 salespeople, and they just don't get in front of enough people. So I would say something to you like, Ron, can you show me a copy of the prospecting plan these people are operating off of every day? And Ron, what do you suppose the typical business owner would say at that point?
I don't have a prospecting plan.
Okay. He might say it eagerly, he might say it hesitatingly, but he might say, yeah, something like that. Well, I don't know. I don't even know if they have a prospecting plan. And then if I want to make the pain hurt a little bit more, I might say, well, maybe I misspoke. What I meant was, can you show me the list of daily, weekly, monthly activities that your people participate in on a regular basis to make sure they're doing the activities they need to do to get in front of the right people? And then the guy's going to say, well, Ron,
I don't think I have that either.
Okay, so now a couple of things have happened, hopefully, not in a humiliating way, but hopefully a couple of things have happened. One is now Ron, the business owner, is thinking, maybe that's something we should have. Maybe we should have a prospect. I never even thought about it. And the second thing I'm hoping he's thinking is maybe this guy sitting in front of me asking me this question knows something about this that I don't know. Maybe he can teach me. So in that presumptive question, I want him to learn that I might have something that he needs. Now, I'm giving a very simple example. The prospecting plan. This can work in a lot of different businesses with a lot of different products. So let's say Ron says, yeah, that sounds like something we need. And I say, well, Ron, let's suppose you had a prospect. All your people had a prospecting plan. And let's suppose your sales manager was very adept at having accountability meetings with them every Friday morning and going over their plans and coaching them on that. How do you think that would impact or help the sales help them get in front of the right people?
And obviously it would help them, because if I don't have it now and I'm in problems, I'm starting to realize that, hey, there's some things here that I don't have. Essentially, what we say is we're giving them an aha moment. We're sharing an insight with them that is changing how they see a problem, or realizing that they have a problem that they didn't know existed, or at least connecting the dots. And what you've done it is through questioning.
Yeah, and let's back up and start that sales call over and say it starts with, hey, Ron, it's Brad McDonald, Sandler Training. We have some really great ways of helping your people prospect. We have this thing called a prospecting plan. Would you like me to come in and teach it to your people? Probably not the same impact. Because
no. One of the things that I was thinking of is as I was going through this role play and realizing I've got these problems, the first thing that I'm realizing is I want this problem to go away. That's always at the back of my mind, is that, I want this to go away, and I don't necessarily want to do it. And I'm kind of looking at you. I'm kind of thinking, well, you're on the phone. It sounds like you know what you're talking about. Can you make this go away? So you also, the Sandler method also, though, goes deeper, right? You've got something called the pain funnel, where you can take people from, just telling you, here's what my problem is, to actually the personal impact that it's having on me. And I think that, at least my opinion, that's where decisions are occurring. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. We have an expression that I'm not sure we coined it, but anyway, it says that people make decisions emotionally. They justify their decisions intellectually.
Right.
And of course, we also teach that psychological theory, transactional analysis, which talks about the three ego states, parent, adult, and child, that lie within each of us. And many people will tell you that they don't make emotional decisions, but what brain science says is that actually every decision we make is emotionally based. Mm-hmm. It's that child within us that says, I need it, I want it. And I always say, if you don't think you make emotional decisions, just look at all the stuff you have, because almost everything you have, you don't really need. Most of the nice features and luxuries we all own are things that we don't need. Our child emotional state wanted them, got excited when they saw them. So what the pain funnel is it's just a sort of an illustration of a process of taking people from an intellectual state of mind to an emotional state of mind. Now, it's not meant to be deceptive or overly manipulative or anything like that. It's just a simple process of starting with an intellectual problem, which you see on their screen. What's a challenge you're facing, such and such? And as you ask them these questions, you go from an intellectual approach to the problem to emotional. And when people feel more emotional about their problems, they tend to make more decisions more quickly.
I can tell everybody a story here that just last week, I was having a conversation with one of our clients, a massive enterprise client, revenues in the billions and billions every year. And I asked them, what's the biggest issue that people, when you get in front of a client and you know that you can help them, you absolutely know that your services will make a difference to the company's bottom line. What stops them from buying? And there was no hesitation. The person said, because the first thing they're thinking of is that if I take this service, I end up losing headcount at my company, and that might threaten my job. And so it's very interesting that, we think that this CFO or, director of operations or chief operations officer is going to make a very, very logical decision on what's best for the company. The logical decision would have been absolutely the cost is lower. But interestingly, the impact is, if I lose 30 or 40% of my headcount, is the company going to question whether they need my position or not, or they need someone of my seniority in this position? It's absolutely personal impact. And that's not the only example. I can tell you examples in our own business when we were dealing with various clients in previous jobs. The reasons why people were making decisions had nothing to do with the logical reason for doing that. It always came back to, how does this impact me? Does it make my life easier? Does it make my life harder? Does it add money in my pocket? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I really am a massive fan of this pain funnel. And it's a tricky one to get though, right? It's not like you look at an infographic and then you got it. Do you find that?
Oh yeah, and it's not just a matter of reading off the questions. It is, I say the pain funnel. If you can't think of anything else to ask, go ahead and ask the questions there. But it's meant to be a conversation, just like, in fact, here's an illustration, I think. I was training a group of about 10 people who were in a healthcare business, and one of the people was a doctor, an actual medical doctor. And we were discussing this pain process, and I asked them to come up to the front of the room with me. And I said, I want to try something. I just want you to do whatever comes naturally, but I want you to pretend that I am a patient who came to see you and you're the doctor. And I said, my shoulder hurts. And he started his thing. Now, what do you suppose he did, Ron?
Oh, he probably diagnosed you.
Yeah, he said, he started asking me questions. Say, okay, tell me more about that. Does it hurt here? Does it hurt there? He said, can I touch your arm? Yep, you can touch it. And he lifted it up. And then he said, well, how long has this been going on? Did you injure yourself? Did you fall down? I mean, he hit about 3/4 of the questions in the pain funnel. And then he started, what have you done to fix it? And I said, well, I've tried some hot pads and this and that and the other. And finally he said, well, okay, here's some thoughts I have. I think I have a diagnosis for you, but I'm curious. I mean, how important is it to you to fix this? So basically, he in his medical doctor role, he had no problem doing that pain funnel naturally. And of course, if it had been a real thing, I would have said, okay, blank check, fix my shoulder.
Yeah, and for everyone online, if you haven't connected the dots yet, what do they say? They say a prescription without a diagnosis is malpractice, something like
Yes,
that.
right, exactly, yeah.
So-
And the other thing we say is people buy for their reasons, not yours. So in the case you mentioned of the executive who thought, well, I could lose my job over this, it might make sense to the salesperson, but not to the buyer. And we say pain is not transferable. No two people feel the same pain.
Right.
Don't assume because it all makes sense to you, it's going to make sense to the buyer.
So of course, when you're calling in and you're saying, hi, now that I've got you on the phone, I'm calling from ABC Company. ABC Company is the top company in the space. We work with companies like this, and this is our service. Of course, what you're doing is you're basically saying, well, it doesn't really matter what problem you have. I don't need to diagnose you. I know that my solution is going to work without diagnosis. And that's why it doesn't work. That's why people, in my opinion, want to get off the phone or don't really give you a lot of time, don't think that your diagnosis or your solutions are credible because you haven't diagnosed. And what I like about the pain funnel is not only are you getting to the point of actually getting them to make a decision, but you're actually finding out a little bit about the company as well. You're actually finding out how you can help. You can actually connect the dots for them in terms of, you've got this problem, this is the solution, let me show you how it fits together, just like Lego. And that's the key part that's missing, which is why so many people are finding it that, people don't want to call me back. They don't want to engage, is because they're expecting the type of engagement that you're going to give them, which I think you guys say it's show up and throw up. You just show up and read a brochure. That has absolutely no value.
So I think the pain puzzle and the pain funnel are just two representations of the process, which we say is the first step of qualifying. A lot of sales folks are eager to do presentations and give features and benefits, and then basically the only thing left to do is to try to close the deal. We call that qualify easy, close hard. Nobody likes to be closed. So when you do a good pain step, what you're doing is you're qualifying hard, which makes the close easy.
Yeah.
Because in the pain step, the prospect starts to realize this is about me, not about your product or service.
So guys, I'm going to connect the two here. Sort of the point that we want to make in this seminar. If you have questions, I do have a couple minutes for questions, either for myself or Brad. Start typing them in now. The point that we really wanted to make is this. Yes, social is absolutely going to make a lot of problems disappear. I think a lot of applications like video messaging really, really helps get you in front of decision makers. One of the things that you have to remember is the messaging is probably critical. It doesn't matter. You're not changing just because technology is coming into the world today. Doesn't mean you don't have to worry about selling. If that were the case, we could just, put kiosks at the back of the room and ask buyers to put their credit card in. We need salespeople to be able to take people through this type of discussion, to take people through pain funnel, to use strategies like a 30-second commercial or an upfront contract to have a much different conversation. Now, how you deliver that conversation, whether it's through social, whether it's through video email, whether it's through telephone or face-to-face, doesn't matter as much. It really integrates with selling methodology and selling training. And really, you want to keep at the top of your game, at the top of your salesmanship abilities and skills by always improving. So obviously, if you need some help, you've got Sandler here. You've got a fantastic trainer here. You can ask him any questions. And of course, if you want to learn about how we do prospecting, lead pipeline, and use social to find advocates in sphere of influence, we're here as well. Don't ever stop learning. I see we've got a message here from Greg. We are starting with an email to find the appropriate person. How do I get them to open and respond? So I'll do the first part, Brad, if you'll do the second. I would say the delivery of the message of what you want to say is one component of the success there, Greg. So how I say what I want to say is going to be component one. The second is to have a diversified message. Maybe the person is very, very accustomed to just deleting emails and not responding. So I would say, don't lean only on email. If you've got a buyer in front of you that wants to talk to you on the phone, or you can engage them on social, mix up the diversity of your approach so that they get the message. Now, in terms of what we would say, based on what Brad was saying, I would say you're probably leading with a 30-second commercial or upfront contract. What do you think, Brad?
Well, I think, because as you were talking, I was thinking about the emails that I get. Most of us get sales emails daily. I mean, and frankly, I don't block all of them because I like seeing what people are doing. But the ones that are the easiest to delete are the ones that start off with, I have such and such a product or such and such a service, or I can help your technology, or I can help this. Those are easy for me to delete because they don't make me say, ouch. When somebody starts off with a question that says, are you concerned about X, Y, and Z? I've been talking a little bit about the financial aspect. Most of us are interested in our personal finances. If somebody emailed me and said just something as simple as, and I'm making this up as I go here, but if somebody said, does the current bubble in the stock market scare you, Brad? I would keep reading because I would be thinking, you know what, it does. And I would be thinking, ouch. So I would keep reading that one. But if they just start off by saying, we have so many happy clients who love the way we help them navigate the stock market, no, that I haven't said out yet. So that's my simplest thought is, can you, whether it's in the subject line or the opening line, can you ask a question that causes a little uncertainty, a little pain, a little bit of ouch? I always say, if you want more of somebody's attention, create uncertainty, because that's how the emotional brain works.
Okay, so there's a question here for you from Sean, and it's sort of a battle I've been seeing on social, and I don't know why people keep mentioning this. It just seems like the dumbest thing ever. Just keeps this stupid topic front of mind. But Sean asks, Brad, and Sean, not picking on you, buddy. I completely agree with you. This question, Brad, people tell me that cold calling is dead. Do you believe this? So this question that keeps going around the internet about cold calling and not using cold calling. What are your thoughts, Brad, from a Sandler perspective?
Well, I'm going to confess, I made a lot of cold calls in my time, but I did not ever make a living on cold calls. I did think they were, whether you have success with them or not, I think they're great for one thing, and that is they're great for strengthening your gut system, because somehow Picking up the telephone and making a cold call is a terrifying thing to a lot of people. I mean, in my past life, I was in the U.S. Navy and I was a submarine captain, and I thought I was a pretty brave guy out there facing the ocean and the Soviets and all on a daily basis. But when I came out of the Navy and had to pick up a telephone to make my first cold call, I was terrified. I really was. I could hardly dial the number. I was so happy when the lady said she wasn't interested, so I could hang it up. So I do think it helps you. It helps you with prospecting in general because it helps you structure a short, quick conversation to get any better at it. And I did make a few sales off cold calls. So that's, to me, is a benefit for anybody. I tell the people that I coach, I don't care if you want to make cold calls part of your life. I think you ought to make enough of them to get good at it. So that's one thing. Now, probably that's not what your questioner was asking about. They're probably asking about what is the viability of cold calling. And I still have a lot of people that have a lot of success getting through to people on the phone.
Yeah.
People still talk on the phone. And if you're good at it, there are ways to get through to people. And if you, I have one guy I coach who says, I figured out it takes me 50 calls to get 10 conversations, to get 2 appointments, to get 1 sale. And he said the average sale is $10,000. And he said, so to me, what's 10,000 divided by 50? $200. He said, every time I pick up the phone, I just write down, I just made $200.
Right.
He has a very, very positive attitude about it. And I think that's a lot of it.
And my answer, Sean, would be this. You know, in a previous life, I was responsible for sales and marketing. And so we had, if you think of it from a marketing perspective, it makes a little bit more sense. You know, we think I had available to me radio, television, online advertising, direct mail. I had a whole slew of opportunities. I had paid online, SEO, and I never asked myself, you know, online advertising seems to work really well. Maybe I should just stop doing everything else. It never made sense to me. When there was a new channel that came in, I just adopted that channel and hoped that it was giving me additional leads. I hope it was giving me additional information. So I can tell you, I certainly see evidence that cold calling is getting harder. I don't see evidence that cold calling is generating zero. So until it generates zero, I would say you definitely want to do it. But you know, your success in those calls, in those cold calls, comes down to A, who are you calling? So am I calling somebody who I can be introduced to? Still a cold call, but if I'm introduced, my rates, you know, my success rate goes up. Did you just change jobs? My success rate goes up. Are you an advocate? Did you used to do business with us or work for a company that used to do business with us? And all of these social tactics, my odds of you responding go up. But now that you've responded, if I just flub through the conversation, well, yeah, it's great that they answered the phone, but now I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to spill my candy in the lobby, as Sandler says. So it's a two-pronged approach. Use all of the channels available to you to prospect and get in front of people, and then really practice and rehearse what it is that you're going to say. So, Brad,
one other thing I'd like to say, one other thing about cold calls. Cold calls are not forever. It's not like you're going to live in this prison of having to make 100 cold calls a day for the rest of your life in most sales jobs. And the reason I say that is when you're very early in your business and nobody's heard of you or nobody's heard of your company or you don't have clients, you're going to have to do a lot of cold prospecting. Later on, you have clients, people know your name. Well, you should be getting more referrals. So it's not forever.
Right. And on that note, Brad, thank you so much for making time today to join us. I'm sure that everyone on the team here and everyone listening really appreciate your insights. I think this is exactly what you do for a living for paid customers. Obviously, if you guys want to find out more about Sandler, you can look up Brad, and you can also look up Sandler Training, obviously. And if you want anything from the social side, certainly you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to share with you any of the insights or methods that we use. And if you wanted to get a guide on social selling, that's available to you as well. at the link that I've got on the screen here. I will leave it up for a few minutes if you guys want to copy that down. But Brad, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for making the time for me and the guest today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on, Ron. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.